The Last Motel on Route 66, Ethan's story. I'd been driving for hours under a punishing desert sun, the kind that makes the asphalt look like it's melting. The sky was a hard, washed-out blue, and the heat shimmer made distant objects ripple and distort. I wasn't in any rush, there was nowhere I particularly had to be, so I kept the windows cracked, letting in a breeze that was only marginally cooler than the air inside. I told myself this trip was about freedom, but the truth was it was about escape. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. No one was waiting on me anymore. Route 66 was quieter than I'd expected. I'd imagined the romantic road trip vibe. Classic diners, old motels with neon signs, but most of what I saw was dead. Boarded up gas stations, rusted out cars, billboards bleached to illegibility. Every now and then I'd pass something that looked alive, but even those places had a tired look, like they were barely holding on. The first strange thing happened about an hour after I crossed into Arizona. I saw a man standing on the shoulder of the road. Not hitchhiking, just standing. He was wearing a dark suit despite the heat, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. I slowed a little, expecting him to look up, but he didn't move, didn't even turn his head as I passed. In my rearview mirror, he was still there, the black shape of him sharp against the pale desert. I told myself he was just a local eccentric, plenty of those in the middle of nowhere. But 20 minutes later, when I glanced into the mirror, I could swear I saw him again, this time farther up the road behind me. Too far for him to have walked, but too close for it to be a different man. I shook it off. Sunstroke does strange things to your eyes. By late afternoon, the sun had started to sink, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rust. That's when I saw the sign. Blackwell's Rest, 2 miles. The paint was peeling, but the arrow pointed straight ahead, and I figured I could use the rest. My gas gauge was hovering near empty anyway. The motel appeared suddenly out of the heat haze. Low, squat buildings in faded green, a neon sign flickering with the word vacancy. Behind it was a single gas pump, the kind you almost never see anymore, with the meter numbers spinning mechanically instead of digitally. The whole place had a strange stillness, like the air had thickened. I pulled up to the office. Inside, an old man with a pale, paper-thin face sat behind the counter. His eyes were milky but sharp, like they could see straight through you. "Evening," he said in a voice that was soft but carried. "Name's Henry Blackwell. We've got a room for you." Not many passers-by these days. I didn't remember telling him I needed a room. I'd been planning to ask about gas first, but instead I found myself nodding. The room key he handed me was heavy, attached to a brass fob stamped with the number 6. My room was at the far end, near the edge of the property where desert sand was beginning to reclaim the asphalt. Inside, it smelled faintly of mothballs and something else, something sweet and metallic. The furniture was old but clean, the bedspread patterned with faded roses. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the springs shift under me. As I unpacked, I realized there were no power outlets in the room. My phone was already low on battery. When I went back to the office to ask, Henry said, "Don't worry about that. You won't be needing it here." That night I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing me into the mattress. I got up to get some water from the sink, and that's when I saw movement through the thin curtain. A figure stood in the parking lot, motionless, tall, wearing a hat. I thought of the man I'd seen on the road. I blinked and he was gone. The next morning I met Rose. She was younger than Henry, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She brought coffee to my room without me asking for it. Guests shouldn't have to come looking for what they need. she said, setting the cup on the dresser. Makes for a better stay. I stayed another night. I don't know why. Each time I thought about leaving, something small would stop me. A sudden drowsiness. The way the light outside seemed too bright, too blinding to drive into. And every night, I'd wake to see that same figure in the lot, standing in the exact same place, always gone by the time I looked twice. On the third day, the sheriff came by, or at least that's who he said he was. His uniform looked right, but there was no name tag, no badge number. He stood in my doorway, hands resting lightly on his belt. "Hope you're enjoying your stay," he said, his voice low and even. "Folks around here like to keep an eye on strangers. Make sure they don't wander off." That night, the knocking started. Slow, steady knocks on the door to my room. When I opened it, no one was there, but I could hear footsteps walking away, crunching softly on gravel. I followed them, barefoot, out into the night air. The footsteps led me to the edge of the property, where the sand began. Out there, just beyond the reach of the motel's weak light, stood a line of figures, motionless, watching. I stumbled back to my room, heart pounding. By morning, I was convinced I had to leave. I went to the office to settle my bill, but Henry just smiled and said, "You've already paid." I didn't remember paying. When I got to my car, the gas gauge read empty, even though I'd filled it the day before. The single pump by the office had a hand-painted sign hanging from it, "Out of order." I told myself I'd walk to the next town. I made it maybe half a mile before the heat pressed down so hard I could barely move. The horizon shimmered, and through the ripples I thought I saw buildings, but they shifted like mirages. I turned back. That night the knocking came again, but this time it was at the window. Rose's face was there, pale and expressionless, her lips moving silently. I couldn't hear what she was saying. I didn't want to. The days started blending. I stopped keeping track of how long I'd been there. Sometimes I'd wake up and it would be night outside. Sometimes it would be morning, the sun already high. The line of figures in the desert was always there now, closer each time I looked. One night, I think it was night, I heard a voice right beside my bed. It said my name. I opened my eyes and the man in the hat was standing over me. His face was smooth, too smooth, like wax. He leaned down and I smelled that same sweet metallic scent. "Almost time," he whispered. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up in my car, parked exactly where it had been before. The motel office was gone. In its place was an empty lot overgrown with weeds. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw the neon sign, glowing faintly. Blackwell's Rest, vacancy. I started the car and drove. The desert stretched out endlessly. No turns, no other cars, no towns. My phone was dead. I kept driving until I saw the sign again. Blackwell's Rest, 2 miles. I'm still driving. I think I always will be.